Like by way of introduction, like as I said, my name is Abuchi Ezekwugo. I'm Nigerian. I was born in the UK, but I grew up in Nigeria. I did my primary, secondary school in Nigeria, and then I came back here to do my university, and I subsequently started my working career here. I did try to go back to Nigeria, but at the time, it wasn't a successful project, purely because what I was doing here, I was working in electronic trading technology at the time, and the Nigerian market hadn't evolved in that space. I mean, they've sort of made some progress now. So that move back to Nigeria didn't happen. So I found myself back here. So I work at JP Morgan Chase. I'm a product manager within what we call digital markets. And digital markets, for those of you on the call today, is basically, just think of it like digital banks that we have, like Revolut and Monzo and who else, Starling. Basically, digital markets within JP Morgan. Basically, what we're trying to do is how do we digitize a lot of the things that we do. So I work in the fixed income space, which basically covers foreign exchange, bonds, commodities, and government bonds. Away from that, I do a lot of mentoring. So like if I say that I'm part of some of the mentoring teams at Princess Trust, Social Mobility Foundation, SEO London, SEO Africa, Amos Bursary, and the Global Thinkers Forum, which is more female focused. And through those different mentoring programs, you get a lot of people coming through, a lot of mentees that come through, and there's a lot of joy from doing those programs. So in terms of career, before JP Morgan, I was at Citibank, and then I spent quite a lot of time at Morgan Stanley working in electronic trading technology. And then before Morgan Stanley, I was at JP Morgan again. Before that, I was at Deutsche Bank, and then Morgan Stanley, and then RBS. So I've kind of done 2 stints at some of these organizations. But on the mentoring side, that's something that I'm quite passionate about. So I have a lot of mentees that I've sort of been introduced to via the organizations that I mentor for. So programs and events like these are very important because I think, like Olu said, it's about learning and trying to get the tools that will help you towards your career, and how do you move that forward. So for me, and for those of you on this call, like you should really think of mentoring as a relationship between an experienced and knowledgeable person, i.e. the mentor, and a less knowledgeable person, i.e. the mentee, who's seeking guidance and a way forward, right? Like, and looking for, advice in either moving into a particular industry or looking for advice of how to make their next career move, or how to go about negotiating a pay rise, so your mentor is really somebody that is a trusted advisor, somebody you can go to and you can talk to them about a whole bunch of stuff, right? That's focused on your career. So, I think for everyone here, what are the benefits of mentoring, right? Like, or being in a mentorship program, right? So one of the things you need to look at is the knowledge, right, and skill development, right? So mentees have the opportunity to learn from your mentor's experience, right? And that's the whole idea. Is I have a mentor, I have a sponsor, and I have an advocate, right? That's 3 different people, and those things mean different things, right? Like your mentor is the person who gives you advice you go to talk about all sorts of stuff. Your sponsor in a work environment is somebody that you've identified that will help project your career, right? And they're the people that will take your envelope in the room when there's a promotion cycle to say, right, yes, I know Abuchi, and he performs very well. He executes on all the projects, so I would definitely be recommending that he gets promoted. He works well within the organization. He contributes outside of his day-to-day job because he's involved in mentoring schemes, volunteering schemes. He's a good ambassador for the bank, right? So in your workplace, it will be good for you guys to try and identify somebody who's a sponsor, and that person who can push your envelope in the room. And each of these people, it's a very delicate process of how you identify these people, and then how you approach them to say, please, can I speak to you? I'm looking to do X, Y, Z, and I'd like you to, just help guide the process. And sometimes you don't have to say, I want you to be my sponsor, right? It's almost like you have to find a way to subliminally make the point. And then finally, your advocate is also somebody that speaks on your behalf, right? So the advocate and the sponsors, an advocate for me is a cross between, is a hybrid between a sponsor and a mentor. They kind of perform the two functions, right? So that person has the power to sort of make the point on your behalf, but they also provide mentorship for you. So it'd be good for you guys to sort of, try and identify people like that in the organization you work for, if you're in employment. Excuse me. And then secondly, the benefits for mentoring, so networking and connections, right? Mentors are, professional, have extensive professional networks. So as a mentee, you want your mentor to be able to open or give you access to those networks. And that way you can actually look to leverage those networks and the contacts that they have, whether you're looking for a job, or whether you're looking to meet somebody in a particular industry, right? Like your mentor can potentially facilitate these introductions and recommend you for certain roles, right? Like, even if, for example, I have a mentee who's a good developer, and I know that somebody in a different industry is looking for a developer, with certain experience, I can say to him, right, I know this person, and I'm going to make an introduction. So again, that's one of the things that, having a mentor can be very useful for you, because you can leverage the network and the connections of your mentor. And then personal growth and confidence, right? Like, your mentor is there to sort of help you grow, right? So they're meant to help you, give you confidence and try and help boost your self-esteem. And how do they do this is by encouraging you to do stuff, giving you good advice, and offering you good guidance on your career development. So I'll give you guys an example. Every summer, one of the charities that I work for, SEO London, they have a whole bunch of students who come into Canary Wharf, which is where Olu and I work. And they all have summer internships, either at one of the financial organization or one of the banks. And they typically always ask if I could just help guide them, right? And I know that the summer internships, especially for finishing graduates, are very important, because that's where you get to showcase that you are capable and that you also need the job, right? So I always make sure that we have a plan, right? For those 2 months that they're in the Wharf, we have a solid plan. We meet every week, or we try and meet every week where possible. And this is where, when you identify a mentor, because it's something that's very close to me, and I take it very seriously and passionate about it, I always make the time. I work in a very busy environment. I work in a trading floor. It's very busy. It's high octane, high energy, fast pace. Everyone needs everything done yesterday. But I understand that, it's also important to make the time for people to be able to guide and help people in our industry. There's not a lot of us in our sector, right? There's not that many Black people within financial services. And we also had to change that. And how do we change that? We change that by having events like these where we give people advice on, how do we, if they want to get into that financial industry, what do they need to do? How do they need to position themselves? What sort of skill sets do they need to develop if they're going into certain parts of the industry, right? So we have a plan, and I make the time to meet with them every Friday, if possible. And we basically recap the week and figure out what we've done for the week, what are the targets, right, for the next week. And we already have a plan for the whole 2 months, but we just make sure that we're on target every week, right? And we're executing on all the projects, because often, time and time again, what we end up hearing at the end of the internship is that, oh yeah, I'm going to pick somebody, for example, oh, Shola's really good, but she's just not for us. And we typically tend to ask, well, what does that mean? What do you mean that she's good, but she's not for you? Like, can you give me some tangible examples of, did she not perform or deliver on certain projects? And that's why it's important to be very clear about what your objectives are when you go into your internships for the summer with your manager, right? And you say, these are the things I need you to do. And then everybody's clear. And then every week, we make sure that you're basically hitting those targets, and maybe even hitting the targets going above your targets. So that at the end of the internship, your boss or your manager will not come back and say, oh yeah, Shola is good, but not good. It's like, no, can you give us like proper examples? Like, these are the projects you gave her. This is how she executed across the 8-week period. And every week she delivered this, she delivered that. So why are you saying she's not for us? So it makes people sit up as well, right? Because it makes them, people get held accountable, right? And sometimes people don't like that, but that's what we have to do, right? So it's very clear. It's very important to be clear about your objectives when you're going to like your summer internship. So that's the example around the personal growth and that sort of confidence piece, and how, I tend to make sure that, and the same thing applies to, just your normal working career, right? You started a new job, you're now on a graduate program, what's next, right? And that's how we tend to approach it, is make sure that your boss is clear on the objectives. Make sure you have a one-to-one with your boss every week, catch up, and say, are you happy? Like, what are we working on? You tell him what you're working on, make sure that, you're clear about what you've delivered. If there are areas of improvement, then, make sure he points it out, and then you address it, so that the next time you come back the following week, you say, right, this is what you said last week, and I've made these changes this week, right? So you're always on top of things, and it doesn't always feel like there's a disconnect. You always want to stay on top of, I always say, look, when you go into employment, I know you have a manager, but you ultimately have to manage your manager, right? Because if you don't know what they're thinking, then you don't know how to, address some of the issues. And then some of the other benefits of mentorship is, you have career advancement, right? So mentors can offer valuable careers, perspective and reflection. Your mentors can act as, sounding boards and offer a different perspective for you. And then finally, you build long-lasting relationships, right? You're having a mentor today doesn't mean that after the summer internship, the relationship is over. You need to learn to build relationships. And this is important for everybody here. In your careers, you need to learn how to build long-term relationships, right? Because your relationships become very valuable, right? And you can end up, turning it into a very beneficial relationship that facilitates your personal and your professional growth, and hopefully enhances and expands your skills. So it's a very valuable investment for individuals who are seeking guidance and development in their chosen fields. So with that, I'll hand back to FA. I know we're running close to time. I think I've gone over my 10 minutes. Back to you.
Not a problem. Thank you very much, Abuchi. That was really, really like useful. If there's anything we took away from is have clear objectives, build a solid relationship with your mentor, go for regular sort of check-ins to just make sure you're on track. Then also, I like the bit you said about manage the manager. So even as a mentee, you've got to learn to manage your mentor as well, which is really important. I think some people just think the bulk of the work is just on the mentor. But again,